Hello, Uncanny is back. This is the first episode of Uncanny Cold Cases, a brand new Uncanny series, digging into some of the most scary, the most famous, the most shocking cases in paranormal history. We've got quite a story to kick us off. It's one of the most notorious poltergeist hauntings in British history. It takes place in Pontefract, West Yorkshire. A terrified family experienced years of seeming paranormal activity, flying objects, moving furniture, and a sickening feeling that something is watching. Get ready to be freaked the heck out. And I want to know what you think. Send me your questions and theories. Put them in the comments down below. Let me know if you are team believer or team skeptic. And don't forget to like, hype, and subscribe. Is this truly terrifying haunting genuinely paranormal? Let's see, shall we? Because I'm Danny Robbins, and this is Uncanny Cold Cases.
Secrets still remain.
How are you? Welcome to our brand new series, Uncanny Cold Cases. It's good to be here with you. We've got an absolute cracker of a case to kick us off. Britain's most violent ever poltergeist haunting. To discuss it with me, I'm joined by the dream team of paranormal experts. For team skeptic, forensic psychologist, Dr. Kieran O'Keefe, and for team believer, writer and parapsychologist, Evelyn Hollow. Good to have you both here. This is quite a case to kick us off, isn't it? It might not be quite as famous as the Enfield poltergeist, but it is up there in terms of the kind of phenomena we're going to see.
Yeah, I think for us in our line of work, this is the one that's got the biggest cult following. And part of that is not just the length of the case, the number of people involved, how many witnesses were seeing things simultaneously, but also the variety and the type of phenomena and how nasty it gets.
Oh my God, absolutely. This is the box set of poltergeist activity. Kieran, are you ready to be pushed to your skeptic limits?
Wow. I rarely, if ever, get pushed to my limits. But you know what? This is a case that might do it. And I just say, bring it on.
I love it. You are talking like a wrestler. Look, let's dive straight into this. Now, with all of our cases on this series, we are going to be bringing these stories to life as we dive into the evidence and try and work out what actually happened, as scary as that may be. So, it is Bank Holiday weekend, August 1966. We're in the small market town of Pontefract, Yorkshire, in the north of England. Joe and Jean Pritchard have just moved into 30 East Drive, a semi-detached house sitting in the middle of a 1950s estate. Jean arranged a house swap with the previous tenants. With two teenagers, the Pritchards needed a bit more space, and oddly, the former occupants seemed like they couldn't wait to leave. Tonight, only the Pritchards' eldest, slightly introspective 15-year-old son Philip is home, along with his grandmother Sarah. Philip heads to the kitchen to make coffee. When he returns to the lounge, he freezes. A thick drift of grey-white powder hangs suspended in the air. Is it ash, chalk, dust, something in between? And it wasn't there moments ago. A little spooked, he and his grandmother go across the road and fetch Philip's Aunt Marie. Aunt Marie is baffled too, but she's a practical person, and so she heads to the kitchen to grab the dustpan, and she slips. There's a puddle of water on the kitchen floor. It's appeared from nowhere. She mops it up, but it forms again, instantly, and again. Marie thinks there must be a leaking pipe. She turns off the water at the main, but it still keeps coming. She contacts the water board, who sends someone over immediately, but he can't find anything wrong either. An hour after he leaves, the water simply stops appearing. Marie goes home, and Philip and Sarah are alone again. But around 7 o'clock, Philip calls out in a panic, "Grandma! It's happening again!" His grandmother finds him in the kitchen, staring at tea and sugar scattered across the counters. The button on their tea dispenser clicks and slams down, firing steaming tea across all of this mess. Again, even after the tea runs dry, the button keeps hammering. And then a colossal crash erupts from the hallway. They edge the door open nervously, but the hall is empty. Then the hall light snaps on by itself, revealing the source of this noise. A potted plant has been hurled up the stairs. The broken pot sits on the landing. The plant lies halfway down. Then behind them, the crockery cupboard doors begin to rattle violently, as if something inside is trying to escape. Banging echoes through the house. The temperature drops. They're both overwhelmed now with the same feeling. They have got to get out of this house. Bloody hell, what is going on 30 East Drive? Evelyn, puddles of water, tea, potted plants, crockery cupboards, these things should not be scary. They bloody are.
Yeah, I think when people hear the word poltergeist, they think of horror movies. So they think of, I will kill again written in blood on the wall or knives being thrown through the air. But these are everyday objects that are behaving in ways that defy the laws of physics. They behave in ways that they shouldn't. And more importantly, it feels like the house that you live in is turning against you. It feels like someone having broken into the house and is smashing up the place, except it's an unseen force.
Absolutely, sort of almost putting them under siege. Kieran, Pontefract, it's a really historic town. It's got a big castle there, there's lots of old buildings. You'd kind of expect those to be full of ghost stories. You wouldn't necessarily expect it to happen in a modern, new build council house.
No, you wouldn't. I mean, stereotypically, we think of older buildings as being the perfect environment for ghost stories, and even from a psychological point of view, they're perfect for that sort of thing. So to have this phenomena happen in a modern building is unusual. Don't get me wrong, there are cases that I've investigated, and there are famous cases like the Enfield Poltergeist where they are in contemporary houses and sometimes council houses, but it's unusual. It's not expected at all.
One detail that we should probably look at is that the Pritchard family have just moved into this house. They've only been there about a month when this happened. But they are not the first ones to experience activity at this address, are they?
No, they are not. So unbeknownst to the Pritchard family, the previous tenants actually had to move out because they had experienced phenomena too. So I actually have the report here. Bill and Barbara Farrar, who lived in the house before them, said that they had experienced objects moving, voices heard in empty rooms, that their settee was found ripped and torn to shreds. The hood of a toy pram was also shredded. Jane, their 2-year-old daughter, was found with scratches and blood marks on her face. Now, assuming that she'd done it to herself, that she'd scratched herself, they put cotton mittens on her hands, but despite this, the marks continued to appear, and eventually the family decided to move out because Mrs. Farrar could no longer bear to live there any longer.
Oh my God, and as we move forward in this case, I think some of those details are going to feel quite crucial.
Yeah, I think they are. I don't think this is going to stop. I think it's going to keep going.
Kieran, we have a teenager at the heart of this in Philip, and actually that's something that we see in a lot of poltergeist cases, isn't it? There's a teenager who is seemingly the focus for the activity.
Yeah, absolutely. In parapsychology, there's this theory, RSPK, 4 letters that stand for recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. And psychokinesis is this idea that we can move objects with our mind.
Like in Roald Dahl's Matilda, or, there's characters in X-Men, Stranger Things, aren't there, who can look at an object and then move it across.
Exactly that. And the theory in parapsychology is that an individual at the centre of the case, rather than it being a ghost, it's an individual that's subconsciously causing this phenomena through psychokinesis. But they have to be going through some sort of turbulence or turmoil, and what better period in your life to be experiencing that than when you're a teenager?
And that turbulence is pouring out and making objects move is the theory, isn't it? There's genuine jeopardy here, Evelyn. We've got scalding tea firing out across the room. Are you surprised at how quickly this escalates?
Yeah, I am actually. So normally it begins with people hearing sort of weird noises that they chalk up as being insects or rats and mice, and then it starts to get a bit extreme after that. And then we would move up to objects moving, things appearing, disappearing seemingly out of thin air. But it tends to progress in that exact manner. This seems to go from 0 to 100 within a 24-hour period, which is really unusual for poltergeist cases.
Pumping out scalding tea, chucking a pot plant down the stairs. This is getting dangerous already.
It is, no matter how you look at it, whether you're a skeptic or believer, it is incredibly violent, and for that reason it's really worrying for the family living there.
And it's going to get even worse, I'm afraid. Spoiler alert. So much to think about already, and I would love to know what you are thinking if you're watching or listening right now. Let me know your theories. Are you team believer or team skeptic, having heard all this evidence so far? Have you ever experienced anything like this yourself? What would you do if you did? Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, hype and subscribe. But let's roll forward now to summer 1968. 2 years later, nothing more happened after that spectacular explosion of seeming paranormal activity at 30 East Drive. It just stopped without explanation. But now, suddenly, it seems to begin all over again. The lights keep cutting out for no reason. Each time, the mains electricity switch under the stairs is found flipped off. Eventually, the family tape the switch in place, but it doesn't matter. The lights die again. And when they check, the tape they put on the switch has vanished. Jean gives what she feels is this presence in the house a nickname, Mr. Nobody. And for a while, they treat it almost lightly, blaming it for small disturbances. Bed covers thrown downstairs, pot plants overturned. Creepy, yes, but somehow it still feels manageable. And then Jean decides to redecorate her daughter Diane's bedroom. Diane is nearly 15 now, quiet, waist-length hair. She's the same age Philip was when the previous activity began. The room is cluttered with wallpaper rolls, paint, brushes, paste. Maybe it's this change, maybe the disruption, but it's almost as if Mr. Nobody doesn't seem to like it. Jean hears a shout and bolts upstairs, Philip on her heels. Diane is on the floor of her bedroom, cowering. The paintbrushes that had been neatly lined up have been hurled at her, along with the wallpaper paste bucket. And then Jean can hardly believe her eyes. A strip of wallpaper unfurls itself from a new roll and rises, swaying in the air like a charmed snake. Jean is trying to work out how to reach Diane when suddenly a carpet sweeper, a heavy metal mechanical broom, rises into the air as if wielded by invisible hands, sweeping violently between Jean and Diane. Jean and Philip retreat to the doorway, horrified, as the wooden curtain rail tears itself from the wall and sails straight out the window. Now, this is all too much for Joe, Diane and Philip's dad. He's a miner, he's a salt-of-the-earth Yorkshireman, and this entity, or whatever it is, intruding into his family home is just too much to take. He drags the family out of the bedroom and slams the door shut, as if he can trap inside whatever this thing is. "That is enough," he shouts. But on the landing, the family stand frozen, listening, as suddenly crashes and bangs continue in this empty room. O.M. blooming Jean. Kieran, this is absolutely astonishing. This is unlike anything we have seen before in our investigations together. In the Uncanny TV series, you put me in a wind tunnel to test your theory that convection currents, these breezes through a house, could make objects move. There is no wind in the world that will make a heavy carpet sweeper swing around in the air.
No, there isn't, and I wish there was, because that would be a simpler explanation. Here it's very difficult to explain, although in the moment there's a lot of fear and panic going on, and has that somehow affected, to kind of a misinterpretation of what they're seeing, and that together with their kind of memory of the event turns an object that they kicked over maybe and kind of looked as though it lifted up to then it swirling around in front of them.
Just to pick you up on that though, misinterpretation. How do you misinterpret something that big floating around in front of you?
Well, you don't misinterpret something that big in front of you, but what about if they knocked it? It appeared to lift, they have no recollection that they kicked it, and it becomes a story that starts off with it appeared to lift slightly from the floor because they kicked it, to then several feet off the floor in front of them because of the panic, the fear, and then misremembering exactly what happened.
Right, interesting. I mean, it's a good point. Human beings do misinterpret. We do kind of embellish as we retell stories. Evelyn, it's been quiet in the house for 2 years. Why now? Why are things suddenly kicking off again?
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd moment in the case because it's not only kicked off again, it's jumped focus, it's jumped to Diane. And now we don't know why that is, but we do know that the triggering point for it is when they seem to be redecorating Diane's room. That's not unheard of. When we did the Miss Howard episode, in fact, for the telly, we saw that really escalated when they started knocking one building into the other. And we don't know why it is that redecorating or DIY or damaging the building essentially causes poltergeist cases to begin.
Why are they so angry about interior design? Kieran, what is it about these situations? We've had it before, building work, renovations. Why would paranormal activity, whatever we want to call it, why would it be irritated by redecoration?
Well, I would be irritated if somebody walked into my house and started redecorating. There's a certain logic to that. But I think there's another possible explanation. In the chaos of redecorating and building work, it's quite easy to misinterpret an object falling or one of those tools or materials being misplaced. So, you're asking, why would a ghost be bothered by this redecorating? Well, maybe they wouldn't, because there is no ghost.
Well, look, that is one theory. The other theory is that there absolutely is something there. The family certainly believe that, and they've given it a nickname now, Mr. Nobody. Is it a good idea to name a ghost?
I think it's a human thing to name a ghost. You have an unseen force in your house. I mean, people who even experience like light and sort of pleasant passive phenomena will say, oh, never mind that, that's the ghost, we've called him X. We also saw this in the Battersea Poltergeist case, where they named it Donald. In the Enfield case, they believed it was Bill, a man who used to live there. So for me, I think it's the family trying to personify something, because how do you fight an unseen intruder? But if you give it a name, then it means it's a being, it exists, it is something, and if it is something, then perhaps you can defeat it.
But there will be people watching this right now going, maybe you are encouraging it.
I mean, maybe they are, but what else are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to go to the police and say there's an unseen force ripping apart my house? If you give it a name, are people more likely to believe you? Are they more likely to take you seriously?
But I think they might be encouraging it in a slightly different way. And that is, you mentioned about Donald in Battersea Poltergeist and Bill in Enfield Poltergeist. Mr. Nobody is quite a scary name.
It's a bloody creepy name.
It is genuinely creepy to say who's responsible for that phenomena. Mr. Nobody. That is genuinely creepy. So maybe they are kind of, increasing the phenomena, or increasing what happens by simply adding to the psychology of the situation by giving it a creepy name.
A lot of people will identify with Joe, the father's reaction. He wants this thing out of his house. He reacts angrily, slams that door. Then he hears those noises coming from inside that room that we now categorically know is empty. How do you explain that?
Yeah, well, we know a lot of the tools and materials have already been dislodged because of the preceding incident. Who's to say that when he slammed the door, he didn't cause kind of further dislodging of these materials? They fall to the floor, they create a crash, and because it's behind a closed door, they think it's paranormal.
I'm loving all of these theories. And what do you think is going on here? Keep all your theories, questions and comments coming in down below, whether you are team believer or team skeptic. Also, don't forget to like, hype and subscribe. We would love you to spread the word about Uncanny Cold Cases. Tell everybody. And this case we are looking at right now is not just cold, it is absolutely chilling. So let's dive right back in, because Jean Pritchard is looking for a solution here. So, one otherwise unremarkable Thursday, she invites the local vicar, Reverend Davy, to discuss the strange goings-on at 30 East Drive. The house is perfectly still throughout his visit. Not a creak, not a whisper. The one time Mr. Nobody might have been useful, he stays silent. Jean is just seeing the Reverend out when suddenly 2 heavy thumps echo through the hall and a candlestick falls from the mantelpiece. Reverend Davy smiles politely. "I think I know your problem," he says. "Subsidence." Now, Mr. Nobody does not seem to appreciate the Reverend's explanation. Before his astonished eyes, a second candlestick rises from the mantelpiece as if held aloft by invisible hands. It floats directly and deliberately in front of Reverend Davy's face, as if to say, try blaming that on subsidence. Then a colossal crash erupts in the next room. When they rush in, every piece of crockery has been removed from the cupboard and scattered across the floor. Yet not a single plate is as much as chipped. Now the Reverend's earlier flippancy evaporates here. Whatever is in his house, he tells the family, it is pure evil. When the Pritchards ask what they should do, his answer is simple. Move house. That night, as if galvanized by the Reverend's visit, Mr. Nobody runs amok. Diane heads upstairs to bed. The moment her foot touches the first step, the lights go out. In the faint glow from the street lamp outside, a huge shadow stretches across the wall. The temperature plummets. She turns and sees the solid oak hall stand, a massive piece of heavy wooden furniture, glide relentlessly towards her. Before she can react, it tips forwards and pins her to the stairs. It takes the entire family to pull it away from her. And then, incredibly, things get worse. The second Diane gets into bed, the temperature plummets again. The bedclothes are ripped away, and the mattress shoots into the air with Diane on it, throwing her to the floor before crashing down on top of her. Holy guacamole, what is going on here? Kieran, we've got Reverend Davy. He's a member of the clergy. He feels like a fairly reliable witness. He swears that he saw a candlestick rise up off the mantelpiece and float in the air. Did he?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favourite parts of the whole case, because you've got somebody that's picking on a sceptical explanation. He said that initially the candlestick sliding, oh, I know exactly what that is, that's subsidence. And it's almost then like he gets a response from whatever's there and it's floating in front of him. But we're basing all of this on him being a reliable witness. He's just a member of the clergy with a very strong belief in the fact that there are potential evil things out there. And he even says after the fact fact, no, that's it. Whatever's here is something evil. So I don't count him as a reliable witness at all.
All right. Interesting, though, that Kieran uses that word response here. It does feel like it's reacting to what is being said. The fact that Reverend Davy doubts it and then suddenly it does this thing. It's like it's performing. It's got a sense of humour almost.
Well, it's either a series of sort of unexplained scientific anomalies that we've projected human psychology onto. We've interpreted that as being funny. We've interpreted that as almost being offensive, essentially. Or it was once a person. Is it a form of ghost? Does that mean that it has a gender, a personality, emotions, intention, things like that? I think the most striking bit of this moment for me is not just that it does seem to have a sense of humour, but how do you fake that? How do you fake a candlestick being lifted off the mantelpiece, being lifted towards his face and hovering in midair?
Kieran is shaking his head here. Do you know how to fake that?
Yeah, of course you can fake stuff
Go on,
like
Penn
that.
and Teller, show me.
Come on, then.
Let's hit the glass.
Make something float.
Yeah, go on, Kieran.
I can't do it on
Oh, you
command.
can't do it now. Oh, we can do it now.
No, can't do it on command. But who's to say that this is not set up? We've got to remember, you said it yourself. It's a ghost with a sense of humour. For me, that almost feels too human, that we've got a ghost with a sense of humour that's reacting to people around it.
Are you thinking that this is a human being with a sense of humour then?
Yeah, we've got to potentially look at that as a possible explanation. And we start off with that theory. Is it somebody actually causing this phenomena? And I hesitate to use the F word, fakery. But then as we go through the case, let's look at other phenomena and see if we can support that idea or discount it. But I think we've got to put it on the table.
That's a big accusation to put out there. Let's just try and get our heads around that. We've got a situation where the Reverend's sitting there with Jean. How could a human be doing this? How could somebody make that candlestick appear to float in a way that would trick both of them?
Well, there could be a number of different things. We weren't there. We don't have footage of it actually happening. We've got Reverend Davy, his interpretation that it was floating in front of him. Who's to say there wasn't misdirection, which we often talk about in magic, where his attention is taken away from the candlestick momentarily, and then somebody knocks it. It appears to fly up in front of him, and that is his interpretation of it. So we've got to be very careful about how we interpret this testimony.
I don't want to alarm you, but there is a microphone floating right in front of you right now. Okay. No, this is very interesting. I mean, we do have to be open to this idea that, if objects are moving, then yes, maybe it's potential paranormal activity, but also it's potentially a person.
Absolutely. If it is a person, then they'd have to have the ability to turn invisible and also be in two places at once. Because as this candlestick has risen in the air and is floating, they hear this almighty crash in the next room. They go through, there's a large cabinet that held a full crockery set. All of the crockery is all over the floor, strewn across the floor, but not a single bit of it is chipped or damaged. So A, what caused the noise, first of all? And second of all, if it wasn't, someone would have to go to that cabinet, take each bit of crockery out, put it on the floor, take each bit out like this. They'd be at it for some time. So how are they in two rooms simultaneously doing both of that?
Blimey, my head is already in a spin with this case. Maybe yours is too, but there is still more to come, and I'm afraid it gets so much worse. The frightening events soon settle into a grim routine for the Pritchard family. Lights turn on and off by themselves. Objects continue to fly about rooms. One day, a sandwich appears, bearing enormous teeth marks far too large for any human being in the house. And both children, Philip and Diane, seem to suffer from stomach pains whenever this seeming poltergeist is active. Even so, Joe's no-nonsense sister, Aunt Maude, comes to stay at 30 East Drive. Aunt Maude is a formidable woman. She's a devout member of the Salvation Army, incredibly religious. Maude believes that this whole affair is a colossal hoax, perpetrated by one or maybe even all of the Pritchard family. But her certainty lasts only hours. She and Jean are in the kitchen making tea when the lights go out. The fridge door creaks open, and in its cold glow, they see a jug of milk rise slowly from the shelf, drift towards Maude, and hover inches from her face. It then tips up, emptying its entire contents over a shocked Maude. Shaken, she insists on sharing a room with Jean that night, but the darkness of the bedroom offers no safety. As soon as the light clicks off, 4 light bulbs from their electric fire twist themselves free and begin circling around in some sort of macabre theatre show. Then, Maude's fur gloves that have been left lying on a chair lift and join them, swaying like puppets on unseen strings. Aunt Maude throws a boot and screams, "You're evil!" The gloves drift closer, beckoning at this cowering woman to follow them. When she refuses, one glove curls into a fist and shakes at her threateningly. Terrified, she clings to the only defense she knows, prayer. Voice trembling, she begins singing, "Onward, Christian soldiers." But the gloves don't retreat. They mockingly conduct her before gliding out the room and vanishing out of the door. The next day, Maude picks up her fur gloves and takes them out into the garden and burns them. She leaves 30 East Drive, never to return, muttering, "The devil is in that house." Kieran, is Aunt Maude right?
I don't think so, but also I'm not surprised by her interpretation. She knows what happened to Reverend Davy, but also she has a very strong belief in religion. You know, she's somebody who potentially will be looking at something she can't explain and immediately attribute it to the devil. But there is definitely something strange going on in this house, and what we've experienced so far is only the tip of the iceberg.
You are so right, and excitingly, this is not the end of us talking about this case. Next time, we've got part 2 of the Black Monk of Pontefract. And Evelyn, we've seen so much already, from spooky puddles to ghostly gloves, but things are about to go off the scale, aren't they?
They are. This is a poltergeist case that very nearly becomes a murder case.
There is so much more to come out because we are very definitely not done with this case. This is a 2-part investigation. Part 2 drops same time next week. Uncanny Community, let me know your thoughts. Team Believer, is the devil or something bizarre and evil anyway at number 30 East Drive? And Team Skeptic, if not, what on earth is causing all of these incredible events? I would love to hear your theories and questions. Put them in the comments down below, or you can email me uncanny@bbc.co.uk, or find me, Danny Robbins, on social media. I'm across all the platforms. I will see you next week, and be warned, things are going to get a lot more terrifying for the poor Pritchard family at 30 East Drive.
I think regardless of what you believe this case is caused by, we've escalated to the point now of threat to life.
Here we've got some tangible physical evidence that something was grabbing her, and it makes it very difficult to explain.
Terrifying. Join us next week. Until then, sleep well. Don't have nightmares.
Secrets still